Welcome back to another edition of Research Fantasy presents our MLB DFS hitter picks for May 17th, 2017. We've got a nice slate of games, albeit, as I mentioned with the pitchers, there's no real big-time upside pitching matchups or hitting matchups. There's some, I don't want to say that, but there's enough that I think we'll be able to find some good players to throw out there in your lineups tonight. Let's get things started with Ryan Schimpf of the San Diego Padres going up against Matt Garza and the Milwaukee Brewers at home at Petco. 6,900 fantasy draft, 2,900 FanDuel, 3,500 DraftKings. I've done a lot of advanced statistical research on Ryan Schimpf, and actually I found out that he does two things. He either hits home runs or he doesn't hit home runs. I spent countless hours out there scouring the interwebs for information on this, but this is really what it comes down to. He has pretty much no other alternative than hitting a home run. That's why you're putting him in your tournament lineup. Matt Garza just has not been good against lefties this year, giving up a high WOBA, fly ball rate, hard hit rate. We know that Petco does play a little bit better to left-handed hitting. Schimpf is not a guy that I feel comfortable playing in my cash games, though this is baseball, and some of that logic is not necessarily my favorite. If it's a good matchup, I'm going to play Ryan Schimpf in my cash games or my tournaments regardless. I would classify this as being a situation where Schimpf should be able to have a higher probability of getting the ball out of the park. His downside is nothing. Oddly enough, so is Mike Trout's and Bryce Harper's. So putting him on an even playing field, yes, I don't need the lecture that Harper and Trout have a higher percentage of doing something than Schimpf. But at the end of the day, the ceiling is higher for both of those guys, but still 0 is the floor for all three. So let's move on from there, and let's go to Hernan Perez, Mr. Do-It-All, 6,800 fantasy draft, 3,400 FanDuel, 3,500 DraftKings. Padres pitching staff may be better than we give it credit for. We've seen Trevor Cahill doing well. Luis Perdomo is working his way into a pretty lofty status as well. But Hernan Perez has just been a really scrappy little do-it-all player right now on this team. The price on FanDuel is pretty interesting considering he's just 100 more on DraftKings, and my rule of thumb is that if you can get him cheaper at the same price on DraftKings, you need to consider him a value. That's exactly where I put Perez tonight. Normally we're chasing Jules Chassin with left-handed hitters. I'm willing to go with Perez tonight. I think he's got the potential to put together a nice game here. He has some power. He has some speed. He could do enough to make your lineups really pop. And I still think he's going to be a guy that sees fairly high ownership. He's been there a couple of times in the past week or so. I've seen him owned pretty highly on DraftKings. So I don't mind having some exposure there. I think that he can have himself a good night tonight. Now, my favorite play is a guy who hit 2 home runs last night. And if you've watched my videos or read my articles before, those are situations that I get extremely nervous about because home runs are like touchdowns in that they're pretty fluky because you don't really know how and when they're going to come around. But he's been hitting them pretty much on a solid basis since returning, so I got to have me some J.D. Martinez tonight, 8,400 on Fantasy Draft, 3,600 FanDuel, 4,300 DraftKings. Martinez going up against Ubaldo Jimenez is something that I'll do basically whenever I can get the chance. Jimenez is a guy who can be frustrating. He can put up some good games every now and then, but most of the times it's not a good situation. The Tigers in general are in play, but Martinez, with the amount of power upside that he has against Ubaldo, who definitely makes some boneheaded mistakes more than the common pitcher, someone I want to target. So let's go back to maybe he's got another 2 left in him for tonight. Once again, my top 3 tournament bats on the night: Ryan Schimpf, Hernan Perez, J.D. Martinez. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give our video the thumbs up below. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Head over to researchfantasy.com. Check out what we have there. Follow us on Facebook. Like us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Research and Win, and join us again tomorrow.